Captain Vance Kane was an enigma. At 45, he was no longer the raw, unpolished soldier he had once been. His body had been perfected in the lab and honed through countless battles, his mind sharpened like a razor. In a world where strength, speed, and power ruled, Kane was a master of the most dangerous of weapons, his mind. His preferred method of combat was jiu-jitsu, a deadly art of control and precision. When his enemies tried to strike, he didn't need brute force, he simply needed to take away their ability to move. He'd seen the world burn, he had witnessed the final breaths of the human race as the skies turned to ash. Every person he had ever loved, every friend he had ever known, was gone. It had been 3 years since the event, the day the last human perished. The world, now a hushed graveyard, had become his prison. But there was one last target. Lysander, the man who stood at the center of it all, the one who had orchestrated the genocide of humanity. Lysander was the face of the apocalypse, the one who held the power to erase everything in existence. The stories whispered about him described him as a being of godlike power, capable of bending the very fabric of reality to his will. But Kane knew better. It was time to face him. Through the ravaged remnants of the planet, Kane tracked his prey. For months he moved like a shadow, navigating the ruined cities and broken landscapes. And finally, in the dead silence of what used to be a thriving metropolis, he found him. Lysander stood on a rooftop gazing out at the horizon. There was no dramatic clash, no confrontation. Kane didn't need to speak. He was already there. Lysander turned slowly to face him, his eyes cold yet vacant. "You've finally come," Lysander said, his voice carrying the weight of 1,000 empty years. His face was painted with the grim expression of someone who knew the end had arrived. Kane's eyes narrowed as he closed the distance. Every muscle in his body was prepared to strike, to incapacitate, to finish the mission, but then something stopped him. Lysander was normal. There was no aura of power radiating from him, no energy crackling around him. He looked like a man who had seen too much, a man who carried the weight of failure on his shoulders. "I don't understand," Kane said, his voice sharp as the knife edge of his past. "You killed them all. Every last one of them. You ended the world. What are you?" Lysander's lips twitched, a sad, hollow smile forming on his face. "I am nothing," he said, his words slow, deliberate. "I am a puppet, a vessel, a man with no power, merely the face of something much older, much greater, something beyond our understanding." Kane felt the rage building inside him, but it was futile. He didn't need to fight. It wasn't Lysander who had caused this destruction. The air felt heavier, as if the very sky was holding its breath. Kane's eyes flicked to the horizon, and he understood. He could feel it now, that invisible weight, the presence of something far more terrifying than any man, something ancient, watching, waiting. Lysander dropped his gaze as if he could feel the same thing. "I never wanted this. It was never my choice. But it is done, and I am the last." Kane took a step closer. The devastation around them was complete. The world was silent as it had been since that fateful day. There was nothing left to fight for. For a moment, neither of them moved. The weight of everything, the loss, the destruction, the cruelty, hung in the air like a suffocating cloud. There was no need to speak, no more battles to be won, no more wars to fight. Kane's hands dropped to his sides, his mind finally still. The tension that had been in his body since the death of humanity slowly evaporated. For the first time in years, he could feel the emptiness of the world, not as a battleground, but as a place to exist silently. Lysander sat down, crossing his legs on the roof. Kane followed, sitting across from him, and together they looked out at the horizon where the last traces of the sun set behind mountains of dust and ruin. No more fighting, no more reason to struggle. In this moment, the world was as still as their souls, and so they sat in silence as the last remnants of humanity faded into the eternal quiet.